Hi everyone, Angus Campbell here, Thursday the 16th of March 2023. Right, after the first part, what we were doing was trying to reassemble this lay shaft with its new third gear, recently manufactured, but also trying to determine why originally it might have been difficult, if not impossible, to get the bike to go into beyond second gear, not into third, fourth and fifth. And we think we've found the answer. So this is the lay shaft. These are the gears that line up in sequence on this lay shaft, together with thrust washers, one in two halves, and that is to allow those two halves to be slotted into that slot there, which obviously you wouldn't be able to do unless it was split, because it wouldn't be able to go over the splines. The second thrust washer, this one, fits here and butts up against these splines. But what we were finding was that this third gear wasn't meshing properly into the fourth gear, in that all the dogs weren't engaging completely, like so. They were slightly out, because, says he making a mess here, this thrust washer which sits here is actually more than its OD is more than the ID of the edge of that gear. And so what we think's happening is that fourth gear here, which sits between the two thrust washers and idles independently on the shaft here and butts up against the thrust washer, which the thrust washer's there to give it, you know, a better surface for it to spin on. We think that thrust washer might have to be a smaller OD to allow it to fit inside there, so that this gear will slide more fully home into that gear, like so. Gears are going all over the place here. Anyway, what we did was did a bit of investigation, nothing much online, and what I've done since is I've dug out the general arrangement drawing that I have. So let's have a quick look at that now. So here is a factory general arrangement drawing which shows a number of full-size cross sections from different plans and planes of various components and sub-assemblies of the complete engine. Just scanning around here just to give you an idea of what's included, but primarily it was to identify and label up part numbers. But here we can see a cross-section of the gearbox, lay shaft and main shaft, and this enables us to identify how the components there fit together on the shafts. So I think what we can deduce from that drawing with some confidence is that this gear is supposed to slide along the lay shaft and over that thrust washer to engage fully with the dogs into fourth gear here. So we need to either try and reduce the OD of this, which, as I've got a lathe, is going to be difficult to do without making a mess of the whole washer and not being able to get, if you like, a consistent diameter.
So what I did was manage to find a manufacturer that would make a few up cheaply enough, and there we are. So it's the same ID but a smaller OD, so that it actually fits inside there, but still wide enough to act as a thrust washer for this to push against on the inside. So that will now sit here. It does slide on there, I can assure you. First thing I did as soon as these arrived, got out of the right size. They came in an enormous packet, and you just think, oh my god, have I actually ordered or sized it up incorrectly? So there we go, that sits on there. This gear, well, let's see if we can, with one hand, oh, I might not be able to do this actually because it doesn't slide too well. Sorry, forget that. But anyway, this will slide up there and over that washer to fully engage home into fourth gear there. Sorry about the shadows and the moving about. Right, so hopefully that explains it. So I'm pleased about that because I think we've found the big issue. So one issue is not necessarily that we were using the wrong revision of the gears with the wrong number of dogs, etc., but that we couldn't physically move the gear all the way across with the cam on the selector forks, and so the selector forks weren't going all the way into the cam, which actually then locked the cam, i.e. would prevent the cam from turning any further because the selector forks weren't going to the extent of the appropriate grooves in the cam. So there we are. Now the other thing we wanted to look at was the fact that this split thrust washer sits here, and then this gear is in an interference fit on this spline to push it home, but that in this indentation here is where this split thrust washer sits. And we were thinking that again, that this isn't pushing all the way home on these splines. The thrust washer seemed to be a bit proud on the left hand side, so again that might affect things as well with respect to the way that the layshaft sits in the gearbox, because on the other side of this gear, on that surface there, is a thrust washer, a bronze thrust washer that sits flush against the crankcase. So that's going to affect, how effectively the layshaft sits. It might need to be pushed across a few thou. So looking into this a little bit more, both these halves seem to fit in there fairly well. They do, honestly. And they're a little bit proud, but not too bad. And then you check them on the shaft to make sure they're the correct diameter, and they appear to be. But there's an issue, because if you then check them the same way here, they sit proud, and that's because the diameter here is bigger than the diameter there, because you can see there's a slight edge. Just focus. Just there. That's better. There you can see it. So the diameter in between the splines is greater than the end diameter that fits into a needle roller bearing on that side. So these two split washers are the wrong internal diameter. The internal diameter needs to be taken out. So we'll try and attend to that job as well, and to do it in such a way as to not damage these. These are the only pair that I've got. I suppose they're, to somebody with a lathe, they're going to be easy enough to make, but we'll have a go at trying to shape these out a little bit, because the OD is correct. the ID needs to be increased slightly. So there we go. A couple of diagnoses there of why we've been having issues with not being able to get to beyond second gear. So what I'll do now is try and dress these up. It's not going to take much, and then we'll try and assemble the lay shaft with its gears before we then fit into back into the gearbox, which we've still got to clean out as well. Right, that sets the scene. Okay, there we are, all together as a test fit. So what we've done then is, just in there, you might just be able to see the slit of that slit thrust washer is now a much better fit behind this push-on fifth gear, I think it is, which has gone on much further, so you can hardly see that split thrust washer now, whereas before this was sitting further that way, so this was slightly prouder than it is. So that's much better. The replacement washer, thrust washer, i.e. the equivalent outside diameter of this, but sorry, the equivalent inside diameter of this, radius of this, but a smaller outside diameter, reduced outside diameter, is now, well, it's actually inside this gear down the back there. Let's just see if I can show you. Just slide these two across a bit. There we go. There it is. Just in there. So that gear spins against it. But it's now got a reduced OD, which means that when the selector fork here that sits on here pushes these two gears across, I'll try and replicate that now. It's a little bit stiff actually, I've just got to possibly, what have I done here? There we go. Line up the dogs, push it in, there we go. So now the dogs in this gear are engaged, and you can see that the dogs not quite fully home, but much further engaged than before. You can hardly see them now. So that's great news. So that means this gear, the inside diameter of this gear, of the lip at this end, the inside diameter of that is actually engaging over the outside diameter of the thrust washer. Right, I think that's enough explaining. You get the picture. So what I'll do now is clean this lot up a little bit more, do a final fit. We'll clean the gearbox cases, etc., the gearbox enclosure itself, and then when I bring you back, we'll fit this lay shaft in with all the selector forks, etc. Right, gearbox cavity cleaned up and ready to hopefully accept the lay shaft. So this is the main shaft with its cluster of gears. There's a hole at the end there to accept the selector fork spindle, and there it is currently with the selector forks on it. And at the end here there's a needle roller bearing in here, blind ended, to accept the lay shaft, and this is the thrust washer, which is pegged, bronze thrust washer, which goes against the smaller fifth gear that goes at that far end there. The what we can do is take the selector forks off the spindle, so we can install the lay shaft with the selector forks loose, which makes it a lot easier, and then we can line them up and insert the spindle afterwards once we've engaged them properly with the grooves in the cam plate here. You can see the grooves underneath there, which engage with the small little nibs with small steel bushings on them on the selector forks themselves. So I'm going to be all fingers and thumbs in the way here, so I can't really show you this too well, and it'll probably be a fiddly job with some obviously choice use of language, no doubt. But anyway, we'll oil this lot up and we'll try and get the lay shaft in there. Just let me show you which way around it goes, just to keep you informed. Now here it is, and that goes into the far end, so this small 5th gear on this surface here goes against that bronze thrust washer. Right, here we go. Right everyone, there we go. Wasn't too bad in the end. As I say, what you can do is take the 2 end gears off the lay shaft here on the right, this big one and the one behind it. So you've only got 3 gears on it. You can then insert the lay shaft into its needle roller bearing at the far end, and then you can also add the selector forks, 2 selector forks, engage them into the cam wheel at the top here, and then slide the spindle through, which we've managed to do. And you can see there, just about underneath the cam wheel there, you can see all the nibs of the, there's a better shot, selector forks have engaged. And it also helps as well that the cam wheel here, you can raise it on its spindle with its mounting nut at the top here, and then drop it down while you're carefully moving the selectors into position. The only slightly worrying thing, it certainly looks a lot better lined up, etc., with all the gears than it was before. The only slightly worrying thing is I think I've got it in neutral, but it's not in neutral if I turn the back wheel. But anyway, what we'll do is, I mean, nothing's going to be absolutely lined up properly until we get the end cover on here. But that's what we'll do next, and get the quadrant engage, which engages on those teeth on the top of the cam plate there, and then we'll be able to see once we've done that if we can actually change gear manually. But anyway, that's the worst job done. So what I'll do now is put the inner and outer covers on. That's quite straightforward, and then we'll see how we can take it from there. Inner cover on with the quadrant engaged, hopefully in the right position, assuming we're in neutral or first. Still appears to be in gear, even though I don't think it should be, but there's no reason why we can't do a trial fit anyway and just see if we can engage the gears and find neutral, or if we've got it wrong, find several neutrals. Just one screw holding this cover on, everything lined up, lay shaft, main shaft, that's the small housing for the selector fork spindle, and we're all ready then to get the outer cover on, which comes with the kickstart shaft and spring already pre-engaged, so it's easy enough to fit. And then you've got the gear change mechanism here and clutch ramp, ball ramp there. Right, must remember to put the clutch, in this case push rod, through the centre of the main shaft first. All right, outer cover on, and I've just temporarily secured it by the dome nuts on the 2 studs to pull everything together. So in trying to go through the gears, then it does appear to go through the gears, but I don't think I've got the quadrant quite lined up. I think I'm probably one tooth out on the quadrant. I can find neutral, but it's a little to one side, and also I can't quite get it into fifth, but I'm pretty sure it's going all the way up to fourth, which is an improvement. I can't demonstrate it here at the moment, but that's just by, say, moving the back wheel, so I'm not getting much. Well, no revolutions at all on the gearbox to sort of let it bed in a bit. But what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to leave it there for now, and what we'll do in the next part is we'll take the cover off, sort of recheck the quadrant timing, if you like, and then I'll set it up so I can show you how I've been doing some of the sort of manual tests on it. Because I think you've probably had enough at looking at the internals of this gearbox by now, and are probably more familiar with how it works than I am. So let's leave it there. I think we've certainly made some progress. I'm pretty confident that I'm getting into third and fourth gear on it, but I can't quite confirm that yet. And then what we'll do in the next part is, as I say, I'll just retime that quadrant, and at some point we'll get it off the bench and get the motor running. But I'd like to do some more sort of manual tests first and be a bit more confident that I'm going all the way up the box, all the way down the box, and that I can find neutral, you know, a bit more reliably. I can find it at the moment, but it feels as though it's on the edge of a gear and neutral. It's not quite there. All right, everybody. Anyway, thanks for your interest in this saga, and for any comments and subscriptions. And I'll see you all again soon. Cheers, everybody. Bye bye.